who they are and who they want to be. And then they literally build movements for their schools and create a new culture on the foundation of truth and like starting over. And it's like a
Awekenge, this is Mental Matters, hosted by Asego Toto.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Matters. I'm your host, Asego Toto. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation.
You became, I would say that, what drew you to become a speaker, a motivational speaker at the age of 15? And definitely most children don't even think of becoming motivational speaker.
Yeah. Well, I was the shy kid. So I definitely did not think I would ever become a motivational speaker. But I did have two friends in high school that lost their life to suicide. And my town did not know how to deal with that loss. We were giving food to the family. We were praying for them. And that was all great. But we didn't know how to prevent the next suicide from happening. And it turned into an epidemic. We had 12 students in one school year attempt to take their life. So it turned into this negative chain reaction. We didn't know how to handle our mind or our emotions. We didn't know how to deal with the grief and the loss, and it turned into more loss. So at the time, I put my emotions into music. That's what I did personally in my own life. I was going through a split parent home, parents always fighting, dealing with those emotions every single day. It was rough for me because nobody taught me how to do that. I had young parents. They were 15, 16, 17, around that age. They were teenagers in high school when they had me. So they were themselves just kids trying to raise a kid. They didn't know how to manage their own mind or their own emotions. So I didn't learn how to do it properly, but luckily I had music. So I would put my emotions into songs. So when my friends passed away and I saw everybody around me not knowing what to do with their negative emotions, I was like, let's write a song. I told my best friend, come over to the studio, let's put together this song, and we'll take a song to the schools and we could sing the song, rap the song to the kids, and we could let everybody else know that at least they're not alone in these emotions. They're at least not the only ones going through what we're going through right now, and we could do it together. And that was the idea. But again, I was a shy kid, so I didn't really know how to do that properly. I was scared. I didn't know how to articulate my feelings, but I got up there and I did it scared. I did it anyways. I went up and I spoke in front of everybody at my school, and it wasn't my school. It was just a school in my town, local school, the school that my friend passed away from at. And I told my story. I didn't have a script. I didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do. I just told everybody in that audience how I was feeling and how I was dealing with the tragedy that had happened. And afterwards, kids lined up to come tell me their stories, told me their truths. People told me, Jared, I'm the shy kid, and you having the courage and confidence to tell your story just gave me the courage and confidence that I need to tell my story. And that's when I realized that we created a negative cycle when we didn't handle our emotions correctly, and it caused more harm. But we could change our reaction and change our results and create this positive chain reaction of courage, confidence, and compassion that would eventually lead people to telling their truth and being free from those lies that they were living for so long that were eventually killing them. And it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I got to go back to school. I got to get better answers for these kids that are coming up to me after programs, asking the hardest of questions. So I went to school for psychology, behavioral health science, and focused on trauma focused therapy, family dynamics, childhood trauma. That was the big focus of my degree. And that's what I've been doing for the past, I would say this would be my 14th year of doing it.
And when you mentioned that you your community didn't have the necessary resources when it comes to suicide, being not able to know how to react to such thing, I feel like in a way it's that thing still happens now, even now, in terms of that, not only in America but also all over the world. For taking an example, here in South Africa, we don't know what is suicide per se, and in high schools they don't teach such things, whereas I believe it's quite a necessity to just educate children, to educate students in terms of there's this thing, and in a way have that wellness day, whereas we talk about mental health, we talk what actually happens, and allow allow students to express themselves. I feel like that's one of the things that leading causes of suicide is the fact that sometimes as students we have this thing, as you mentioned, that back at home they didn't know how to just validate. In a way, I would assume that to validate your feelings in terms of that being raised by also children, it must be quite hard. And
Yeah.
it's quite something that I myself have, I would say, the privilege of preaching the word of mental well-being, of mental health, in terms of talking in the side of students or children within the community, within the spectrum around mental health. So you mentioned that you, in a way, you didn't feel like you're, in terms of actually in the side of suicide, when you saw that your friend was decided to commit suicide, it might have, I'm quite sure that it had some effects on you. Going back, looking back, would you say that those memories come back in terms of that, of realizing that your friend committed suicide?
Yes, you have to detach from the negative emotions from traumatic experiences in order to have that hindsight 2020 moment where you can see the full purpose of what happened and why it happened. My friend was not a sad person on the outside. Our friend that passed away due to suicide was happy go lucky. She was the cool girl, the tough girl, the class clown. She was the one that would always greet you at the door with a smile on her face. So honestly, on the outside, it looked like everything was perfect, like everything was okay. But on the inside, she was a completely different person going through things that nobody else knew about. And so when I heard what happened to her, I remember looking around at all my friends and thinking to myself, how many other kids are coming to school where on the outside it looks like everything's perfect, but on the inside they're about to break? You know, she could go unnoticed. Then how many other kids are coming to school hiding behind this fake smile, pretending to be okay? And how long until it's too late for them too? So in the beginning, I didn't really focus on the negative emotions that I had because I did have guilt. I did have shame. I did think to myself, what if I would have known, you know, maybe I could have changed the outcome, right?
Yeah.
But at first, I was so focused on making sure that nobody else felt this pain. And as I got older, I had to deal with that pain, those negative emotions that I suppressed that became depression for myself when I was about 23. So I started focusing on speaking at 15, 16 years old. It wasn't until I was 23 that I actually realized that, oh, I haven't forgiven myself for what happened when I was in high school. I have to let go of the negative emotions of guilt and shame that I've been holding on to for a really long time in order to really help people heal and take them to that next level of healing. I usually say that halfway healed people help other people halfway heal. And that's what I was doing. I was just going around the country trauma bonding with people, telling them that I knew how it felt to hurt, which we all have. And I was sitting with them in that hurt. It's like they were in a hole in their life, and I was climbing down in that hole to sit with them in the darkness so they pull up out of that hole. but then I was having to rely on other people to come and get me out of the hole. I would always find myself out of energy. Like I was pouring in everybody else's cup, but I was constantly running out of energy in my cup. And so I eventually had to take a break, about 6 to 8 months of speaking. I didn't do anything. I just sat at my house and I went through my own negative emotions. I did the trauma focused therapy steps on myself. I remembered the traumatic experience. I felt the negative emotions. I detached the negative emotions by forgiving the people that I had been hurt by and forgiving myself for hurting the people that I had hurt and believing the lies that came out of the hurt, and eventually detach all those negative emotions, replace the lie that I told myself with the truth. So I had a sense of identity, a purpose, a foundation to start over on. And then I was able to come back into this career as a whole new person. And after that, I feel like my career just took off. That's when I became an international speaker. That's when I started going to hundreds of more schools, and I created a culture shift program where I help kids do the exact same process, trauma focused therapy, detaching negative emotions and creating solutions based on the truth, their identity, who they are, and who they want to be. And then they literally build movements for their schools and create a new culture on the foundation of truth and like starting over. And it's like a whole new culture is reborn within their schools, and it's built on top of them, the students. And I feel like we were only able to do that because I was willing to go back and start over. I believe successful people have mastered the art of starting over. So if you're trying to help people heal, then you need to start over and make sure that you've completely healed yourself.
You really mentioned something important when you said that you had to stop in terms of motivational speaking and try by any means to go back and reflect and try by any means to forgive yourself and also
Right?
other people. And also going back to that thing of blaming yourself in terms of I could have done better, and it's the things that we usually say when it comes to mostly suicide, because one of leading causes of that it's suicide. It's around in top three, and it's quite interesting that you mentioned that in terms of the most people that are actually dying inside are the ones who keep on smiling, keep on having that energetic, try to make other people happy. And there are so many things that you really mentioned, and I feel like things that the audience needs to hear in terms of that thing of trying to forgive the people that have hurt you. One of
Yeah,
the
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one in terms of forgiveness is not something that you could wake up one day and say, no, I forgive you. In a way, it's a process. And that thing of forgiving yourself starts with, actually, of forgiving others starts with yourself in realizing that, yeah, I'm in this state. And in order for me to start the process of healing, I need to firstly heal myself, forgive
Yeah.
myself, and so that I can forgive others. And childhood trauma is quite something that is really, really something that people haven't, in a way, I would say, figured it out in a way, and not knowing
Yeah.
how to address it. In how to address it. If I address it, what will people say? We have this thing of thinking that people will say this. If people will say this, and I'll be ashamed, that would have been a waste of time. So, in terms of addressing that thing, and also within teenagers in general, within students, when it comes to childhood trauma, there's this thing of having different types of coping mechanisms. And to you, what was some coping mechanism in terms of trying by any means to heal from trauma that you experienced?
Yeah. I think one of the main coping mechanisms that I had was just staying busy. I played every sport. I got different jobs. I'd have 2 or 3 jobs, side hustles. I thought that if I was either making money or making somebody proud, then the coping mechanism was a negative one, and I was at least doing some good. But you can do great things as a coping mechanism. You can go help the world and be dying inside. You really can. And so that's what was happening, quite literally me helping other people and going and speaking in schools before I was completely healed and forgiven myself was a coping